welcome everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you again. Yes, as Annie said, this is the kind of the keynote presentation, and we're kind of going to be having a look at the operator's point of view when it comes to telco clouds and the whole sort of space and how that's actually changing as we go forward. Okay, so let me see if we can. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of really the focus for today. So we're kind of going to try and give you a little bit of a flavor around sort of what's happening in the telco space and how really some of the recent technologies are kind of really affecting the changes in that space and how telcos are actually reacting to that, both kind of from their own internal technology and also kind of how they're presenting their services to customers as well. Okay, so for those who don't know who I am, Richard Simons. I work as a Chief Technology Officer at T-Systems. T-Systems is part of Deutsche Telekom, the German telco giant. And yeah, we offer basically cloud services, AI services for both Deutsche Telekom as well as our other clients as well. So I've been with T-Systems for about it's coming up over 4 years now, actually. I've been in the industry for 36 years, done lots of different types of roles in the past, all the way up to kind of principal consultant, obviously now as CTO. Most of my career has kind of been really with working with vendors, the likes of IBM, Lenovo, Mirantis, Worldwide Technology, Contino. I'm very much an advocate of cloud native, focusing on open source, and obviously more recently around AI as well. Obviously, I do lots of this kind of webinars and presentations, and I also do YouTube as well. So I have my own YouTube channel. We'll try and touch on that a little bit more later on today. Where I kind of really focus on these technologies and areas that are very close to my heart. Okay, so as we said, we're kind of going to do a kind of a state of play, really, of this sort of the operator's point of view. We'll look at the telcos and the sort of telcos really moving into sort of this techco sort of space. So they're kind of really adjusting their position in terms of the technology, as we said, and also the services that they provide. We'll look a little bit more at the sort of the telco cloud and what are the sort of key areas that we're focusing on. And then I wanted to kind of really tease out sovereign AI as a specific topic, because that's affecting, everybody really. So it's important to kind of maybe look at that from the telco perspective and also look at it from an enterprise perspective as well. So we're kind of trying to define that and look at that in a little bit more detail. Then we'll kind of draw some conclusions, some takeaways for you. There will be some time towards the end for Q&A as well. So we'll try and give you that opportunity at the end. I believe there is an ability for you to actually ask questions on the platform. So feel free to actually do that. Okay, so what is the sort of operator's point of view? So the state of play is that obviously telcos have been kind of going through this sort of so-called cloudification for some time. There's kind of that's kind of continuing. We're sort of reached this point of the so-called horizontal cloud. There's a kind of lot of discussion around that. Whereas previously, sort of telcos have kind of really focused more in silos in terms of what they do and some of the service they provide. It's now kind of really moving more as a sort of a horizontal approach to those services. So all the groups, all the teams have kind of worked separately, and the silos are kind of now focusing on one platform. Obviously, things like virtual network functions, that's kind of where we're coming from, and we've focused a lot more now on cloud native networking functions, or CNF. So this kind of is really the latest version of how we're trying to offer sort of telco and cloud services. And this obviously continues to work alongside the more sort of heritage physical network functions, the PNFs as well, PNVs rather, as well. So where are we with that kind of movement? So roughly speaking, somewhere between 40 to 55% kind of where that cloudification and digitalization is actually happening with telcos globally. Deutsche Telekom specifically reports about 44% of workloads already in the cloud, and the target is around 70% by 2027. Now, the major disruption, I think, has really come in from the kind of the conventional IT industry. I think that's kind of what's spilling over into the telco space. So we've already seen it, as we said, with things like the the cloud native sort of movement, but more recently with things like AI, Gen AI, and so on. So this is kind of really the sort of conventional market really influencing how we drive services, so both for customers and consumers as well, and businesses and consumers. Also looking at the tech stack decisions that we make. So how do we actually build our own stacks, and then how do we help customers from a hosting perspective, which is where T-Systems focuses. How do we kind of help customers make those decisions as well as we go forward, especially with disruptions like Gen AI? And then obviously that translates into sort of the portfolio that we provide as well. How do we offer those services? What do they look like? The flexibility and the kind of capabilities within those. Obviously, Gen AI is is a high priority area for everybody really, not just the telcos. And this is driving definitely a massive market, according to Omdia, around 25 billion by 2030. It's kind of the global telco network sort of focus that we are looking at by that time. So clearly, Gen AI is kind of making a huge impact in both the sort of the conventional market as well as the telco markets. Other factors kind of are affecting hosting decisions for enterprises. Those include things like digital sovereignty, which has kind of come through the last sort of couple of years. Sovereign AI has kind of been born out of that really, and this is kind of really focusing specifically on where you run your AI models, how do you secure your models, and so on. And then further beyond that is things like edge AI, so actually running AI at the edge, where the data and the telemetry is actually being collected. So that's kind of really what's happening there. Now, AI itself has kind of made a shift recently, and we've kind of gone into that sort of the age of inference. This is where we go from training models to actually running those models into production. And that side of it is called inference. So that's kind of really just setting the scene for where we are and what's actually happening in the market. Okay, so as we said, the age of inference is kind of there. There's a kind of a maturity shift really from, as we said, from training to running your workloads into production. I guess the main point when this happened, the inflection point, was the second half of last year. That's kind of where it started really coming through, and everybody was kind of starting to discuss that. And then Gen AI models, obviously today, as we said, they're quite sophisticated with the advent of things like AI agents and agentic AI. That's also kind of breaking barriers, introducing new ways of working, new workflows that are coming through as well. And for that reason, there's kind of less requirement really for that initial development and training of models, and the focus kind of moving more towards the runtime layer of your AI models, and where you actually run your models. So for that reason, inference will be representing around 40% of the data center demand by 2030, and that kind of indicates the move towards that. So telcos really need to take advantage of that, and not kind of just the automation side of it, but the agentic AI approach as well to how they offer their services. Okay, so telcos into techco. So as we said, telcos are kind of morphing into techcos, and the reason for that really is, there's several of those. There's actually a lot of focus around revenue pressure. So there's kind of this connectivity stagnation, as it's called, by the analysts, and this is obviously a way for becoming a techco is a way for the telcos to actually expand their horizons. The hyperscaler competition, so obviously kind of digital natives, such as the big three players in the hyperscaler space are also forcing this as well. So it's quite important to be able to compete with the hyperscalers. And obviously, it's kind of a way to maximize the monetization of things like 5G technology as well. So focus more and act like really a sort of a software-driven service provider. And obviously, this brings efficiency as well. So there's automation, as we said, and AI in our operations. That's kind of really one of the other reasons. And then you're effectively strategically positioning or repositioning yourself to kind of remain relevant in that world. This kind of idea of running at the speed of AI is really important, and I think telcos need to be are cognizant of that and are therefore trying to really position themselves to be in that space. So obviously, the maturity has come a long way. We've kind of calibrated between sort of the focus that we have and kind of where we've come from the technologies that telcos have provided in the past, as well as the hosting technologies as well and services. But now we've kind of still have some way to go as far as that kind of focus is concerned. So for tech companies, the calibration is really different from telcos. So telcos kind of come from that sort of way of and background of kind of measuring success, looking at kind of what they offer as a sort of a utility. So a number of kind of focus areas for them there, things like uptime, availability, compliance, operational stability, and so on. Whereas tech companies that are in that space already, where telcos want to be, really optimize for things like speed and innovation, and being able to ship apps and code more quickly, iterate on that process, and obviously do lots of automation and as much scale, as much automation as possible, and scalability as well. So those are, I think, the two differences when it comes to kind of where tech companies are, the already sort of techco, so to speak, and where the telcos are and where they're trying to actually become part of that techco space as well. Okay, so telco cloud. So our focus really has been around the early announcements that we saw in 2025 around gigafactories. That's kind of really been the main focus for Deutsche Telekom as well as T-Systems. The focus for that has been around the more recent industrial AI cloud. So that's been kind of Deutsche Telekom's response to that. That's obviously been in partnership with NVIDIA. That was announced last year. We got the industrial AI cloud up and running in less than 6 months, and we actually have active customers who are using that at the moment. So clearly, the focus for us is to move towards that sort of AI capability, both for the service that we're providing, but also how we host customers on our cloud. And industrial AI clouds is kind of the first tranche of really being able to offer that. Now, for more conventional sort of workloads and customers, we have the T-Cloud Public, and that's the focus that T-Systems has a lot more when it comes to delivering cloud workloads. And we position T-Cloud Public, formerly known as Open Telecom Cloud, or OTC. We position T-Cloud Public as really a hyperscaler platform. So we're, I think, around 80% of the core functionality of a hyperscaler. You can find that in T-Cloud Public. So these areas really represent this sort of the main focus for us going forward. This is really our telco cloud, and obviously we offer services within this for our customers, as well as the technologies that Deutsche Telekom and T-Systems is actually using internally as well. So as we said, we kind of wanted to focus a little bit more on sovereign AI for the last part of the presentation here. So what is sovereign AI? So it's basically the ability for a nation or an organization to be able to do everything when it comes to kind of their compute, the development, deployment, governance of that, and to be able to really own the infrastructure, all of the data around that platform, the models, AI models, and so on, as well as the personnel and the operations within that. And this is a really more of a strategic independence. It's not a kind of a necessarily just a, for technology's sake or because it's local, it makes it easier to access, and you can maybe increase your security and so on. I think that's all part of it, but the kind of the strategic aspect of it is important. And the reason why I think this has come through is not just because of the sort of the recent drive towards sovereignty, but also because of cloud outages. We've seen a number of really major cloud outages over the last few years, and obviously more recently there were some really major failures. So we're customers are kind of very wary of that, and obviously the likes of T-Systems kind of being a cloud provider and a services provider is very much aware of that and cognizant of those things that are happening in the industry. So the idea here is to really be able to take some of the types of services and operations that are provided by the hyperscalers and see if we can actually provide those in a more local way, and obviously be able to take advantage of things like high availability, and that overall provides a higher resilience for the type of workloads that our customers are demanding to run. So key aspects of kind of sovereign AI include things like infrastructure sovereignty. They are focus on locally hosted systems. The data, of course, that's always been part of the sovereign aspects, and probably the most highlighted part. That's obviously quite important. So it's kind of ensuring your data is stored and processed within a specific geographic boundary, or some kind of compliance with the regulation boundary, such as things like GDPR. And then on the AI side, you've got things like the model and the technical sovereignty of that as well. So where do you train your model? Where do you do the inference, as we said, when it goes into production? I think is also really important. So your data sets that you introduce, as well as the databases, as well as the inference data that's generated later on as well. And I think a number of kind of enterprises are not really aware of that. They're kind of using Gen AI models that are in the public cloud, and then realizing that actually in order to be compliant or have sovereignty or achieve sovereignty, they really need to move those models into either a colo location or or their own data center, kind of a private sort of cloud approach. So those are kind of definitely there. And as we said, it's a strategic sort of approach. It's reducing kind of the risk from, as we said, those sort of outages, and the overall really supply chain disruption as well. So what's the criteria for sovereign AI? I think this kind of chart really depicts it. Well, I won't kind of go through the details of that, but suffice to say, AI is kind of really becoming sort of the foundation for competitiveness. So things like productivity, industry, defense, culture, economic power will kind of really be all shaped by how we implement AI and how we use AI. So it's not kind of an obsession, if you like, but it's more a way to be able to make sure that we really have focus on and control over our own future when it comes to AI platforms, the influence those kind of have on culture and society, and so on. So like I said, the chart kind of goes into a little bit more detail in regards to that. So you got things like obviously, as we said, data sovereignty. You got the model architecture sovereignty, which is important. You have the compute, as we said, obviously, inference sovereignty. So this, as we said, the part where the model's actually running in production. the data centers. That's kind of the physical location. So as we said, it's maybe okay to run some of those models in the public cloud, so you can kind of do your proof of concept, you do your demos and so on. But actually, when it comes to inference, when it comes to production, you need to kind of look at hopefully more local platforms are available to you. And obviously, this kind of drives the sort of the economy as well, the sort of the AI economy as well. So the ability to kind of build and capture that sort of value domestically and keep it domestic is important because it can kind of recycle back into into this process. So that's kind of really the sovereign AI aspect that I kind of wanted to highlight the criteria for that, and just to try and distinguish this from digital sovereignty. So digital sovereignty is kind of the bigger picture. Sovereign AI is kind of one of the offshoots of that, because as we said, we're seeing a lot more customers moving the AI to inference, and obviously starting to use it in production environments. So why is kind of this strategic? So as we said, national security and resilience is important. So in different types of workloads, things like defense, healthcare, finance, you need to really have that sort of jurisdiction control over that, and that's kind of the demand from those market sectors. Control, obviously, over the information, how perhaps society and culture is really shaped, if they're interacting a lot with AI models and external platforms and so on, is all really sort of under the under this umbrella as well. So shaping knowledge, values, and public opinion is all kind of part of this drive. Having dependency risk mitigation. So again, as we said, we've seen lots of kind of outages from the major hyperscalers recently. A lot of the traffic that they also the internet traffic that they manage kind of goes through their public clouds. I think in AWS instance, I think it's around 70% kind of goes through that sort of North Virginia corridor. So it's really important that we kind of try and mitigate some of those risks and avoid sort of being exposed to geopolitical disruptions. And then, as we said, the more that we feed into that sort of or recycle that sort of knowledge and feed that knowledge back into our own platforms, the more we can innovate with AI and the data, as well as the kind of the infrastructure that we want to have jurisdiction over. This kind of gives us that competitive edge when it comes to sort of economy. And as we said, the kind of the regulation and compliance side of it has always been there. So the financial institutes have kind of been regulated and comply with various laws in that space. But this is kind of really looking at it for more from a sort of an oversight and auditing capability to have everything aligned. Okay, so let's draw some conclusions. So the telco space, as we said, is still kind of on that journey to cloud native. So we've kind of come from that physical, very much siloed type of network to the digitalization that we've gone through and the recent sort of cloudification. So the digitalization just kind of allowed us to, detach the telco services from those sort of siloed proprietary hardware platforms and racks and networking systems and so on, to make that digital, to actually be able to run that in the software layer, not in the hardware layer. That was kind of the first sort of move towards sort of cloud. And now more recently, the focus has been around cloud native. So actually taking those digitized services, so the NFV type services, and actually making them more agile and joining the sort of the mainstream cloud native sort of movement. So containerizing those workloads, having orchestration layers that make the provisioning of those workloads and services a lot more easier for the telcos, and obviously a lot easier for our customers as well. And then more recently, as we said, the kind of the digital sovereignty and Gen AI is also the other disruptions that are coming through. And I think the telcos are trying to really look at that and respond to that. So as I mentioned earlier on, with things like the industrial AI cloud and T-Cloud Public, that's kind of really T-Systems and Deutsche Telekom's response to that. The adoption and modernization, I think, will continue. So this move towards, as we said, a sort of a horizontal architecture and design for the telco clouds, bringing in, as we said, cloud native, but also adopting some more of the recent changes in the cloud native space. So things like platform engineering, where everything that you produce is really treated as a normal product, just like a washing up liquid or something like that. Everything's treated as a product from end to end. And that's really what cloud native brings in through things like platform engineering, which is kind of the latest approach to how you do DevOps. And then the other side of it is kind of really the infrastructure as code. So solutions such as, or technology such as GitOps is really kind of bringing that approach in as well. And that allows us to again, be able to treat our infrastructure as code and be able to be a lot more flexible with the way that we actually provision that. And this kind of whole movement from a sort of static approach to a more sort of declarative approach is really what platform engineering and GitOps really bring into this sort of modernization of telcos. And as we said, the fundamental shift in AI to the inferencing sort of phase, this is kind of really like I said, happening right now as we speak. And sovereign AI, as we said, kind of part of that sort of whole Gen AI movement and the digital sovereignty is almost becoming a default. I don't think you can really do any of the things that you kind of want to do in that AI space without actually looking at it's a sovereign AI and making your AI model sovereign AI model. So that's kind of really again pushing both the telcos as well as enterprise customers as well to really look at how and where they're going to be implementing their Gen AI models, and I think that's really important. And we'll see probably a lot more of that in the second half of this year going forward. Hybrid is fine. So as we said, we've kind of worked with physical systems. The ETSI and the CNCF have kind of done some sort of collaboration, but we need to really see that in an official capacity. As far as I know, there isn't anything that's kind of in an official capacity. So that kind of mutual respect and compatibility is not enough. I think we need to maybe see a more of a official way of actually having the ETSI standards as well as the CNCF kind of really working together. So ETSI is kind of coming from that sort of telco background. Obviously, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the CNCF, is kind of from the cloud native space as well. So that's kind of really important that we see more than just a mutual respect between the players in this space that actually set the standards. We want to kind of see more official support and cross compatibility between the two. T-Systems, as we said, is fully committed to T-Cloud Public and the Industrial AI Cloud. These are really our platforms that we use for the kind of services that we want to offer to our customers and indeed host our customers. So T-Systems kind of more on the hosting and support side, and obviously Deutsche Telekom more on the telco space itself. So we will continue to drive for innovation, look at how we offer customers the services that we have and improve on those and enhance those and innovate on those services. And kind of really bring in more features into things like the T-Cloud Public, which is, as we said, our sort of flagship public cloud in Europe. So that's kind of really the focus on that. There's obviously a lot more to be said in all of these areas. I've kind of merely skimmed the surface and just given you a quick update on those, but I just thought these were kind of areas that are really important and kind of show you where really both Deutsche Telekom and T-Systems are coming from. Obviously, if you want some more support and advice and services, by all means, reach out to us at T-Systems. As we said, we offer not just the sovereignty stuff, but we also help customers migrate into the cloud, as well as do things like cloud cost management and various other services as well. So we're obviously more than happy to assist you with that. Okay, so just a few reminders. I do publish quite a number of articles for T-Systems on their website. So there's a number of those kind of focus on all of these areas that we've discussed today, everything from sort of availability to cost management to sovereignty and so on. So feel free to have a look at those. I'm sure we're going to be providing the links so you can actually get those as well. As I said, on the YouTube side, I have a YouTube channel called The Cloud Therapist. So if you search in your YouTube app for Cloud Therapist, you'll see my channel there. And I really focus on sort of cloud native AI, open source discussions, demos, and covers a number of the conferences as live streams as well. So yeah, feel free to connect with me there and subscribe to the channel. Okay, that's it for me. Hope you find that useful. Appreciate the time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard. I could ask you, we could be here for the rest of the morning. I have loads of questions I'd love to ask. Sadly, we're almost out of time. I just thought one thing that struck me, well, out of many, was that you didn't really go into agentic AI very much. You stuck really with Gen AI.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, obviously, agentic AI is far less mature. And I think there's a lot of people going to end up with a lot of egg on their face with agentic AI. So I'm just wondering, though, how soon you would expect to see agentic AI maybe having an impact? Or do you think that issues like sovereignty have assumed such importance pretty quickly that those are more the focus than applying new tech? And I mean, the whole thing is about a different way of working, not a shift in technology, isn't it? I mean, all of it. Right. It's a huge upheaval. It's not just about plugging in a new box.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I agree with you. That's kind of there's been some distractions along the way, and more recently, and the agentic, I think, side of it, there's a lot of hype in that space. So we're seeing, what I'm seeing is that the AI agents are certainly coming in, but we're seeing them in the same way as how we adopted AI in the first place, Gen AI in the first place, which is really they're augmenting existing platforms. So you'll see it a lot more in spaces like observability platforms, for example. So all the vendors in that space, with the likes of Gartner, from kind of a research and analyst point of view, have said the same thing as well. So AI agents coming in, but actually within a existing platform. So much in the same way as Salesforce and all these other platforms acquired AI, so you could prompt and you could talk to them within the platform. So that was kind of augmenting. It's the same thing with AI agents for now. And we'll see kind of, yeah, sure, that will expand in the future. It'll become more agentic. We'll have, agents, sort of swarms and things like that will be kind of running. And, that will take us more towards that sort of autonomous, telco cloud, if you like. This is kind of where everybody wants to head to. But I think for now, we need to keep our feet firmly on the ground when it comes to this technology, and just kind of look at what's feasible and what's possible. And one of the concerns I have in the whole AI agent and agentic space is that there isn't really an industry standard way of being able to authenticate and authorize agents to run in your production environments. So in the cloud native space, we've had things like, a service registry. So every service needs to register itself before it runs. So what I would like to see is an AI agent registry. So every AI agent must register itself with the registry first before it's allowed to run amok in your production environment.
You
So
took
I've
the
seen,
words out of my mouth there with the running amok, actually. That's just
yeah.
what I'm
So
saying.
I've seen kind of certain announcements around that. So the likes of IBM and a number of other vendors have, you know, announced things like that, but not quite kind of what I'm, expecting it to be. But hopefully we'll see that, and I think that will encourage us to, be able to run AI agents a lot more easily and a lot more, in a trusted manner when it comes to our production workloads.
Richard, thank you. We could talk all day, and I'd love to.
Absolutely.
I hope you'll come back.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much indeed. That was great.